We grew up together in an orphanage from a young age. After meeting and getting to know one another, we fell in love and remained in love. She became the only heir of the Song family when her biological parents discovered her shortly after she gave birth to our child. Our son adopted the Song surname and attended a prestigious school from a young age. When I gave Oriana the divorce papers many years later, she became a little impatient and asked why. Chapter 1. Are you leaving empty-handed? Don't be impulsive. Our son can't go with you. Oriana's eyes never left her phone screen as her company prepared to go public. I calmly responded, because last night the food I cooked got cold. Her transformation used to make me proud, but now all that's left is a trail of broken pieces. I give up custody of Ezekiel. Before marriage, there was only that small apartment. It was my only thing. Oriana relaxed her eyes and eyebrows as she mentioned the tiny apartment we once crammed into. Are you still angry that Alex brought me back last night? He's just a business friend. Yes, a friend who knew you were married, but persisted in pursuing you. I just stared at Oriana without saying anything. I hadn't had the opportunity to observe her closely in a long time. Oriana looked flawless, and the pink diamond earrings she wore on her earlobes matched the amount we had spent in the previous few months. However, things had changed after a few years. She became a little impatient when she saw me shake my head and inquired as to why. I calmly answered, because last night the food I cooked got cold. I wrote short stories full-time, and cooking was my only pastime before the Song family took Oriana back. Oriana struggled because of her low starting salary while studying finance. She was so busy that she frequently skipped meals. Every day, I prepared and delivered her meals. It was always the best food she'd ever had, she said. The Song family later located Oriana Lee. She refused to get a divorce from me and insisted on maintaining the Lee last name. I carried on cooking her 3 meals as usual. She told me during the first year that she wanted to live off of my food forever. However, a suitor sent her back, intoxicated after a few years. I lifted her off the man's shoulder and told her to eat so she would feel full. She expressed her disgust at the food I had prepared, stating, "The family has a chef. You don't need to make this every day. Why don't you go to the company when I tell you to? Are you that idle every day?" I didn't enjoy doing business, so I wasn't willing to get involved with the Song family's ventures. Ezekiel would only come down to eat when he heard her voice because he was so attached to her. He shook his head when I gave him the food. Why didn't he eat? I asked. He likes Western food and doesn't like home-cooked meals. What's the problem? Oriana felt that my tone was too harsh. Ezekiel pushed hard with his hand when he saw someone supporting him. The soup burned my arm, the porcelain bowl broke, and Oriana gave the child a gentle, consoling hug. Then she looked at me once more and said, "Just have someone clean it up. I'm tired." Chapter 2. I didn't bother to say much because I was staring into Oriana's perplexed eyes. Perhaps the only thing that matters to her now is the movement of millions of dollars. Ezekiel didn't care any less about it. Since his early years, he had been exposed to prestigious schools, and he had frequently wished for a more remarkable father, someone who could make a big impression in the business world, rather than someone who enjoyed cooking. Oriana finally saw the burn on my arm in the daylight. Although Ezekiel excelled at a variety of speech contests, he consistently remained silent in front of me when she called him over, saying, "Dad was injured last night. Go comfort him quickly." Without a father, I believed that providing adequate care would win my child's affection. However, reality revealed my lack of giftedness. Except for a few instances when he rambled "Dad" while he was learning to talk, Ezekiel only gave me a chilly stare. I never heard him call out in the end. As a form of discipline, Oriana pinched Ezekiel's nose and said, "You're not worthy to be my father." I had already packed up the belongings into a single suitcase last night. The house on Old Street is too run down, and it will take some time to complete the paperwork. You can stay here for now. Didn't you love the set of kitchenware I gave you the most? It's not easy to take it away. After I responded, I thought it was funny that the Song family's meals are all specially prepared and delivered by someone. Without me, this house wouldn't have needed a kitchen or expensive kitchenware. I turned and walked away without turning to face the two people I once loved the most in the world. Are you going back to Old Street? I'll have the butler take you. I refused, looked at mother and son, and grinned as I said, "You two are allergic to many things. When you have time, call the family doctor for tests and inform the chefs." Chapter 3. I did not return straight to Old Street. Instead, I went to my birthplace and upbringing, an orphanage. Oriana had also talked about accompanying me here. However, the Song family may have delayed the plan because it was not prestigious enough. I had been giving the orphanage a percentage of my writing fees over the years. The director recognized me the moment I entered. She started talking to me about her early years without realizing that Oriana and I were no longer together. Oriana is a year younger than me, and we were both small at the time. Oriana and I grew up here. I've been watching the chef, Uncle, since I was young and wanted to cook myself, the director said abruptly, gesturing to the back kitchen. Although Oriana disliked garlic, the orphanage did not permit children to have dietary preferences. Later on, though, I would covertly leave out the garlic whenever I cooked. The director gave me the cook's task for today's lunch because she became agitated, and I became interested. I prepared soup, added wood, chopped vegetables, and lit the fire. A number of kids were chatting among themselves as they surrounded me, saying things like, "It smells great, I want to be a chef when I grow up, give me 10 stars," and "A brother who can cook is so cool." Amid these remarks, I recalled my first encounter with the Song family's parents. Compared to me, Oriana was even more anxious. If it weren't for their innately dignified manner, and their insistence that I owe them numerous daughters, they might as well have had "Please leave" written on their faces when they learned that I worked as a writer and that I enjoyed cooking. News quickly spread throughout the circle, and Oriana unexpectedly gained a large number of friends and family members after Songfather uttered the single words, "Good for nothing. I don't associate with such people." Every visitor to our house would make fun of Oriana when they saw me cooking, saying things like, "Your husband is really rare, he can cook." Alex would scowl and show concern for her, asking, "Oriana, doesn't your husband have a smell from cooking? Can he sleep well at night?" Oriana was so tired of being teased that she was unable to maintain her composure. Ezekiel was also influenced by her remarks. "My dad isn't just a lousy chef who only cooks. How embarrassing. My dad should be a great hero." Chapter 4. I spent a few days at the orphanage before returning to my Old Street home. However, she still took into account my pride, and only gently told me, "When friends come over, let the staff cook. The Song family can afford to hire chefs." I started tidying up my belongings while suppressing the memories that were all around me. When Oriana returned, the Song family assured us they had everything the child needed and asked us not to bring anything. That day, every piece of furniture in the old house was stuck in time. Even though it seemed like winning the lottery, it was my sweet dreams wake-up call. I took a nap after getting rid of everything that had to do with Oriana, and I didn't wake up until about noon. On my phone, I found over a dozen missed calls, all from Oriana. There was a pause on the other end, and the caller politely continued, "Did you forget today is the first day of school?" I scowled, not understanding what Ezekiel was up to. "Hello? Are you Ezekiel's father?" "I'm Ezekiel's homeroom teacher." The child refused to eat the school cafeteria lunch today, saying that his father usually packs his meals. Ezekiel went to the top elementary school in the nation, where the cafeteria prioritized nutritional balance in addition to flavor. Additionally, he returned his meals unaltered on multiple occasions when I packed them. "Hello, teacher. He doesn't need the meals I prepare. In the future, our family chef should take over his diet," I replied quietly. Maybe the teacher had her phone on speaker because Ezekiel was standing close by and clearly listening, so I added, "I am no longer Ezekiel's father. For his matters, you can directly contact his mother. Please don't disturb me anymore." "Ezekiel, don't run away." The teacher abruptly apologized to me before ending the call after hearing a startled voice on the other end. When I thought back to my own early years, I understood that there was no such thing as an inexplicable adolescence. But in reality, Ezekiel's feelings had remained fairly constant throughout. Every summer vacation, his grandparents would take him back because they didn't want him living with me. Ezekiel became more and more aloof toward me. "Why do you always do menial tasks? Don't you think you're wasting your time and potential? Why do other uncles fly planes while you just cook at home?" were some of the questions he would ask me before he stopped talking to me. The parent group chat was the sole source of information about him. Several elders from the Song family were happy to see Ezekiel separating from me, but he didn't care. After hanging up, I went to the mall to shop. Just as I was diligently comparing prices, Oriana called. "What did you tell Ezekiel he refuses to eat?" "Can you come back? The child still needs you." I then heard a deep male voice. "Let's take Ezekiel to my newly opened Western restaurant." Oriana seemed to be distancing herself from him, and with no one else around, she continued, "That was a business partner." "Do you know where my allergy medicine is? The chef doesn't know I'm allergic to carrots." I could tell from her voice that she was somewhat aggrieved and helplessly frowned. "Oriana, if you can't find it, order online or have someone buy it directly. It would be faster than waiting for my call. I asked you to have a doctor test the allergens for you and Ezekiel because I don't want this situation to happen again." Oriana was silent for a moment. "Can you send your recipes to the chef great-grandfather misses your cooking very much?" "Are you ignoring Ezekiel's family duties? I'm usually busy at the company." Mentioning great-grandfather immediately softened my heart. He was the only Song family elder who genuinely liked my cooking and encouraged me. But before she could say anything more, I hung up the phone and blocked her number. Home-cooked recipes are available everywhere online. "Oriana, the child doesn't recognize me as his father. You know this well. I want to start my own new life. Please don't bother me anymore. Let's each be well." I also didn't want to keep choosing kitchenware with these interruptions. I felt an unfathomable weariness on my heart. After taking a shower, I dozed off again. Chapter 5. My dreams seemed strange and unreal, possibly as a result of too many recent events. I had dreams about the orphanage in places where teachers couldn't see where silent bullying took place. As I defended Oriana from behind, she was frantically attempting to assist me in retaliating. I recalled the evening of our child's birth. I didn't think that Buddha existed. I knelt at the operating room door, hoping to sacrifice my life to keep her safe. It was pouring rain outside the window when I woke up in the middle of the night. Rain always seemed to be creating music and poetry for recollections. I recalled leaving the library on a wintry night during my sophomore year. With her face flushed against the snowy background, Oriana ran up to me. she encouraged me to eat the roasted sweet potato she had been carrying in her pocket slowly as she handed it to me. I took out a do-it-yourself ring and bit into something hard. "Let's give each other a home." Oriana's eyes glistened with unbridled love, and although she didn't use the word love, it was the most exquisite confession I had ever heard. Later, I made a genuine ring with a tiny diamond that represented all of my love. I asked her to marry me on the day we went back to the orphanage to see the director. After that, I bought this little house and worked frantically to write stories. In our own house, we lay together and whispered sweet nothings. We were family and lovers. 3 meals a day, 4 seasons, and 2 people living together. We couldn't help but embrace and cry with happiness when we learned we were expecting a child. After becoming pregnant, Oriana faced significant stress and suffered a partial job loss. I gave her all of my writing fees so she could concentrate on her pregnancy and not worry about life. Every night, she would massage my hands, feeling sorry for me as I had developed tendinitis from excessive typing. I made a heartfelt commitment to put in more effort to keep them safe forever. The doctor asked me in jest, "Do you want a boy or a girl?" as our baby was about to be born. I wanted a girl, ideally one who looked a lot like her mother. I wanted to make up for our depressing orphanage childhood by showing her the most affection and warmth possible. I also had no regrets about the birth of our son. I thought it was wonderful to have a boy who would grow up to defend his mother with me. Chapter 6. Oriana informed me that her biological parents had located her and wanted her to come back when our child turned 1 month old. Since she had been kidnapped as a young girl, the Song couple had never had another child who would spend their entire life searching for her. Knowing that there were more people in the world who loved her made me truly happy for her. However, this love was so intense that Oriana eventually stopped needing my support. Her attendance at numerous banquets and regular meetings with business elites forced her to take over the Song family's business. She moved to more upscale brands after losing her love for the scent of Qingju perfume. When Ezekiel was 4 years old, Alex showed up. The Liu and Song families grew close as a result of business dealings. Together, they had a lot of events to attend. Oriana and I hardly ever appeared together around our child, so I had previously brought this up to her. I pressed her further, but she dismissed it, saying, "Ezekiel isn't an ordinary child. He can understand." Oriana accused me of overanalyzing and not understanding her, saying, "Financial dealings are inevitable. Don't be insecure and overthink." That one statement left me stunned. In one of my short stories, the male lead thought his secretary was always with him. Oriana's warmth and her unadulterated, passionate approach to love were evident in the deep kiss she left on my forehead as she held my face. I grinned and dutifully agreed, saying, "Go sleep on the sofa if you're like this scumbag ignoring the people around you." Slowly, the rain outside the window stopped. It was getting close to dawn. Chapter 7. I went back to my life from 3 years ago, writing, exercising, and honing my cooking. Someone unexpectedly knocked on the door while I was taking a shower. I wrapped a bath towel around myself and turned to face a stranger. "Sir, hello. I am the chef in charge of the Miss and Master of the Song family's meals." I wanted to shut the door out of instinct, but the person stepped on it right away. The person sheepishly withdrew their foot and went downstairs. "Sir, I've come to seek your culinary expertise. The Miss and Master aren't accustomed to others' cooking and have lost a significant amount of weight. Also, the elderly gentleman is seriously ill and would like to try your cooking." I took a deep breath and wiped my wet hair. "You don't need to call me, sir. I'm not your employer from the Song family." They were about to leave when a call from an unknown number came in. Duncan, your son is throwing a tantrum because he wants to eat your fried rice. Luckily, you put up bumper stickers at home." Ezekiel ran around and bumped into the stairway corner. "How are you getting him to listen during reading lessons? Several tutors can't control him. Also, great-grandfather is sick and misses you a lot. I used to promise Oriana not to have any reason to think of herself as subservient or inferior, but all I could feel was unending frustration and disappointment when her pleading voice came over the phone. I had been cooking her and our child 3 meals a day for the past few years. I never believed that housework was a burden reserved for women or servants, so I disregarded the rumors. All I knew was that love, regardless of gender, was painstaking care. I would keep tabs on Oriana's menstrual cycle, make warm soup ahead of time, and remind her via messages to keep painkillers on hand. When Ezekiel had a fever during one of the rainy seasons, I would make him some medicine and run to the school to make arrangements. Oriana would be too preoccupied with meetings to reply to my messages in the interim. Ezekiel would lament to his grandparents that telling me he was ill was embarrassing. Others would write off the delectable meals I prepared for great-grandfather as my ploy to appease the Song family. Over time, as the enthusiasm waned, only fatigue and apathy remained. "Oriana, we grew up together. You should understand what kind of person I am. We're adults now. We should know what it means to end things. I don't understand why you and Ezekiel have suddenly changed like this. Is it because you can't adapt? Keep some dignity and decency for yourself and set an example for our child. Don't bother me anymore, and don't make me look down on you." There was silence at the other conclusion. I hung up the phone after losing patience. Members of the Song family would occasionally harass me with mysterious tests. They weren't unimportant, but there were times when I truly needed them. People are not necessary for the world to function. Life can continue without them. This obvious insight influenced my decision to sell the property. I wanted to travel the world and sample different cuisines with the money I had saved. Sweet in the south, salty in the north, spicy in the east, and sour in the west. I wanted to sample them all and learn about the cultures that influence them. According to the Song family, appreciating food was a sign of shame. I subtly suggested to Oriana that we take Ezekiel to sample some of the local cuisine during a family feast. Oriana grimaced, her programming class is completely booked. Don't allow him to wander off. Don't let him buy it or hire someone to make it if you want him to eat it. Song's father snorted. "I think the husband you chose is just tacky. What prospects does that lead to? I'm just focused on eating every day." Ezekiel refused to sit next to me, and Oriana remained silent on my behalf. He rushed to join Song's father. Unlike other kids in the future, our Ezekiel is unique. Furthermore, Oriana never offered me an explanation. Being referred to as a treasure girl for marrying me was once a wonderful thing. But now that I was free of obligations and family ties, all that was left was the bittersweet hope for the future. Chapter 9. The house sold in a flash. I picked up my bag and walked out without thinking. I once believed that cooking was a means of bringing Oriana and Ezekiel joy, which in turn brought me joy. Following these experiences, I realized that I genuinely enjoyed cooking, and the anticipation of serving delectable food. A way to spice up life was to flip the wok every step. In addition, I launched a food live streaming channel, drawing a sizable fan base thanks to my culinary prowess and attractive appearance. Jiangxi was my first destination. This city, which was awoken by the scent of claypot soup, moved quickly but was prepared to stop for a variety of delectable dishes while letting out contented sighs. I went into a modest restaurant after wandering the city until late at night. Despite the cold winter, the owner was very excited, sweating on his forehead and wearing a towel around his neck. "Is it safe for me to eat spicy food?" I agreed to eat spicy and nodded. I knew this degree of spice was too much for me as soon as the rice noodles hit my lips. A couple of locals gave me a bowl of soup while I was coughing uncontrollably from the heat. Sucking back the tears from the heat, I accepted the bowl. I experienced a state of transcendence, as though my whole being was submerged in a hot spring. My following continued to grow as I shared the food and live-streamed later, eventually reaching Inner Mongolia. I prepared the regional snacks I had discovered along the way for the locals to sample, because they were really curious about my experiences. I received an invitation to take part in the Nadam festival because I was so well liked. Colorful flags fluttered in the wind as the expansive grassland set the foundational colors. People hummed strange tunes and performed a variety of dances from all over the world. Finally, a bonfire ignited, and food took center stage. Learning the herders' dances made me feel the strongest bond between food and the land. The lights on the far-off mountain ridges illuminated the entire night sky during this feast. I cried without anyone noticing. I used to dream of traveling to a new place with Oriana and seeing the different landscapes, but now I know that one person could accomplish that on their own. There was unrestricted freedom in the absence of both temporal and conceptual limitations. The wind blew through my hair as I lay down on the grassland with the herders. It felt like a lover smoothing away all of your loneliness with an awkward kiss on your brows. There was so much promise in the wide world. Chapter 10. My food travels came to an end after a few years. I made my way back to the orphanage. There would be a charity fundraising event this year in honor of the headmaster's 60th birthday and the orphanage's founding anniversary. I assisted in setting up the fundraising meeting in addition to serving as the head chef. I was well liked by the kids here, and they particularly enjoyed the food I prepared. The kids discovered an injured puppy one day while they were playing nearby. At first, the headmaster forbade pets, but I stepped in and offered to look after it, arguing that it would foster in the kids a stronger sense of empathy and life responsibility. Reluctantly, the headmaster shook his head. "All right, spoil them if you have to." The cheers from the kids were so loud that they almost drowned me out. When I went to bed that night, I discovered my room door covered in candy. The kids used to call me brother or uncle in passing at first, but one day they all started calling me dad, which confused and delighted me. However, having experienced my own orphanhood, I could empathize with the children's yearning for affection. Chapter 11. One day, a nonprofit organization gave the kids free admission to an amusement park. I was one of several teachers who were chaperoning. A sudden commotion broke out from behind me as I was exchanging tickets in front of the line. The kids were fighting now. It had been years since I last saw Ezekiel when I hurried over and heard him shouting, "Dad is my dad, don't call him that." "Who are you? You're the one who shouldn't be calling him Dad." "I'm Ezekiel. Stay away from my dad. I'm his real son." "And you're a liar. Dad's last name is Lee, not Song. You're just a braggart." He was now thinner and taller. Only after hearing those few words did I recognize him. I asked the kids, "Who started this?" Sternly. I don't usually get upset, but my harshness caused the kids to bow their heads. With a guilty expression, Ezekiel approached and took hold of my shirt. "I started it, Dad." "Really, hitting others is wrong," I said as I squatted down to look him in the eye. "They were calling you Dad, but you are my father." He ignored me and looked at me with red eyes, saying, "I don't care, Dad." "Do you not want me anymore?" I scowled, perplexed by the Song family's predicament. "Do you know the difference between right and wrong?" The child had lost all sense of accountability. I got up and looked around. Not far away, Oriana was standing. The kid, Duncan, is terribly missing you. Even though her makeup was flawless, her posture betrayed her weariness. I had pictured what it would be like to see Oriana again when we first split up. I anticipated being overcome with emotion, either in tears or excitement. But I didn't feel anything at the time. I felt troubled and only looked at Ezekiel, who was still looking down at the other kids. I inquired with the kids about any injuries they might have sustained. Emma timidly held up her hand, saying, "Dad, the little wooden figure you made for me broke." Ezekiel grew even more agitated, saying, "That was Dad's gift to me." Since nobody was hurt, I relaxed and called the responsible teacher. In order to make up for it, I assured Emma that I would make her another wooden figure that was identical to the one she already had, and even larger. Emma joyfully went on her way after joining the others. Chapter 12. Ezekiel continued to cause trouble, and Oriana was unable to deal with him alone. I approached. "Years have passed, and you have truly disappointed me, Ezekiel." When Ezekiel first saw me, he didn't anticipate receiving a reprimand. Stunned, he stood there. I kept staring at the boy in front of me. "It was wrong of you to hit someone first, and it was worse that you didn't say sorry when you broke someone else's property. Above all, you were dishonest. You threw away the wooden figurine. Remember how the headmaster taught me how to make the wooden figurine? I made one for Ezekiel as well. I discovered it in the trash can one morning. According to the servants, young Master Ezekiel declared it to be undesired trash and gave the order to dispose of it. Yes, I had forgotten it at the time, but he always had the newest toys, and he could get anything he wanted." Ezekiel's eyes glowed with guilt, and he shuddered as he said, "Dad, I was wrong. This kid, I used to have a lot of hope for him. I stayed up all night taking care of him when he was ill, and I hoped he would grow up strong and healthy so he could defend his mother as a man. However, he was no more significant to me now than any of the orphanage kids. Perhaps he recognized the coldness in my eyes because he moved to the back of Oriana." Chapter 13. To make dinner for the kids, I returned to the orphanage. Oriana and Ezekiel arrived at the dinner table, which surprised me. "You will have to make dinner on your own. I didn't make it for you." "Is it really so difficult to add 2 more sets of utensils?" Oriana asked, her eyes looking hurt. "The orphanage is short on funds, don't you know?" I said. Oriana fell silent, and Ezekiel gazed hungrily at the food that the other children were eating. Sensing our tension, the headmaster quietly called me outside. I found out from the headmaster that the Song family had been funding the kids' recent events and excursions. I felt compelled to prepare a meal for the kids because of their joyful smiles these days. I just prepared some egg noodles for the mother and son because they were both food sensitive. In a few quick bites, Ezekiel consumed his entire bowl. Oriana, however, didn't eat. She just gazed at her bowl of noodles. Ezekiel gazed at her plate longingly and said, "Mom, if you're not going to eat that, can I have it?" Twice before Oriana finally replied, "No, this bowl is mine. Nobody is able to handle it. It's my bowl. Nobody is able to handle it." Chapter 14. The children crammed themselves into a single air-conditioned room to conserve electricity during the hot summer months at the orphanage. "I can't find the stories you used to tell me online, so Ezekiel wanted to sleep with me, Dad. Did the corn-stealing mouse ever make it through that large door?" I stared at him in confusion, wondering if he had changed all of a sudden. I still recall that one family dinner after Ezekiel vanished, and I wonder why he became so interested in those old tales. I found him with Alex when I went looking for him. Like a true father and son, the two were holding hands. "My dad's stories aren't nearly as fascinating as your adventures, Mr. Alex. Instead, I ought to be your son." Yes, as long as your mother is on board, Alex said with a laugh and genuine eyes. Mom will undoubtedly concur that she believes that man is worthless, as Ezekiel clenched his fists. At the wrong moment, these memories suddenly flooded back. I gestured with my hand for Ezekiel to stop talking, ignoring the pain in his eyes. Since there were other kids sleeping close by, I gestured for him to follow me. You know what it's like to leave here, Oriana, so I asked her if her life script with Ezekiel was complete. You are aware of how difficult it is for the orphanage's teachers, and now they must expend even more energy caring for you two. Don't be so self-centered. Soon bring Ezekiel back. Explaining to your parents is difficult, so don't return. After giving me a long look, Oriana drew Ezekiel away. Oriana was pulled down as Ezekiel yanked her away while clinging to my leg. She dropped to the floor. I sighed helplessly. You pushed me away first, Ezekiel, as he hurried to help her up while sobbing uncontrollably. Dad, you really don't want us anymore, he said. I left them to deal with their own lives while I went on with mine, turning and walking away without turning to face them. Chapter 15. I entered the King of Chefs competition covertly because the orphanage teachers knew I loved to cook. I found it amusing when I first learned about it, but I also wanted to take part and see how much my cooking had changed over the years. Increasing awareness of our orphanage was one of my objectives for this contest. The simplest tools are all that are required for the highest level of cooking. I immediately got started after bringing the cooking supplies from the orphanage. It's possible that my extensive travels and exposure to various cuisines over the years have improved my knowledge and comprehension of food. I was shocked to reach the finals. The audience was enthusiastically applauding me, as were the headmaster and the orphanage kids. The last round was a freeform creative challenge with the theme Memories. Looking at the kitchen utensils brought back a lot of memories. Could you please explain why your award-winning dish, Mr. Lee, was a plain-looking fried rice dish? This competition had a lot of sponsors and got a lot of attention. In the face of all the attention, I responded. The orphanage kids have little money, but they adore fried rice. I think a lot of people do too. I saw Oriana and Ezekiel sitting among the audience members as I looked around. I replied without turning to face them. The person who prepared the fried rice for you must have been a very special person you will never forget. The kids were yelling, "Hero Dad," at the top of their lungs all around me after the interview. To their applause, I grinned as I left the competition site, and a reporter caught the action. My King of Chefs dad became the trendiest topic of the day. Ezekiel attempted to give me flowers, but he was never able to do so. Oriana called out to me multiple times, but I simply waved my medal at her and casually left. Chapter 16. I finally made it to the ancestral home of the Song family after all the detours. When he was very sick, my great-grandfather requested a bowl of my homemade dumpling soup. Some things are more important than personal grievances, even though I no longer wanted to be associated with the Song family. Awkwardly, Duncan's great-grandfather asked you for a favor, while Father Song and Mother Song sat across from me. My great-grandfather had a passion for cooking and had publicly defended me multiple times. He would have prepared the food himself if his health permitted. I went straight to my great-grandfather's room, paying little attention to Father Song or Mother Song. Even though his eyes were already clouded, he recognized me right away and asked, "Why did it take you so long to come see me?" I smiled, took his hand, and apologized. After a brief period of silence, the great-grandfather asked, "Is there no chance left between you and Oriana?" I didn't want to offend the elderly man, but I also didn't want to mislead him. Regardless, you will always be my grandfather, and I will always respect you. He sighed. To be honest, Oriana already feels bad about it. Ezekiel is a good child, but his upbringing was incorrect. By this time, I was no longer particularly moved by hearing such consoling remarks. I changed the subject, Grandfather. Do you want the dumpling soup to be thicker or something? My great-grandfather grabbed my hand out of the blue, and a glimmer of hope came into his gloomy eyes. Do you still love Oriana? If so, I'll fight for you to regain what you lost, even if it means using my old bones. I gazed at this pathetic elderly man who was still battling for an unrecoverable love. Grandfather, I used to love Oriana very much and prioritize them over everything else. Fate is cruel, the great-grandfather muttered to himself. You are owed by our Song family. You're a good kid. Oriana was attempting to bring in a cup of water when she heard glass breaking outside. She left in a daze, looking pale with a few hairs falling over her forehead. The elderly man sighed again and instructed me to thin out the soup a little because thick soups weren't common in his day. Chapter 17. Alex was smoking outside the Song family's home as I was leaving. When he saw me again, he didn't try to hide his contempt. What's so great about you? Does Oriana still miss you? He asked, shrugging. That is not my problem. It is yours. He got angry when he saw how uninterested I was and grabbed my collar. You left. You abandoned her. She continued to call your name that night while intoxicated. That's enough, Alex. This is just between us. Alex threw his cigarette butt to the ground and stormed off as Oriana moved in front of me. I was the one defending her 20 years ago, but the scene was strangely reminiscent of that time. Life seems like a passing dream, and time is like a river. It's not just Ezekiel Duncan, Oriana said as she straightened her unkempt hair. It's also me. We couldn't survive without you. I can't stop wondering if we would have been happier if I hadn't returned to the Song family. She took hold of my arm and called Duncan back. Please. I stepped back calmly and said, I've already spoken to Grandfather. You still love me, don't you? I would rather not repeat it. Oriana had never been this desperate in my memory. Tears gathered in her eyes and silently trickled down her cheeks as her lips quivered. Oriana was under a lot of stress when we first joined the Song family, so I would reassure her by weighing the advantages and disadvantages. She would always lay there quietly, listening to my heartbeat after washing up and letting her damp hair fall onto my chest. Love was only a moment, but I had thought it would last forever. It was true that Oriana had shed a lot of pounds. Her wrist was so fragile that I was afraid it would shatter if I held it too tightly when I pried her hand from mine. Don't lie to me, Duncan. How can you prove that you don't love me? I didn't believe that love could be corrupted by money. Simply put, having money gave us so many choices that we stopped appreciating what we already had because we thought there would always be more. I had devolved into a dish over the years. It was our hearts, not time, that changed from steaming hot to cold leftovers. Chapter 18. I asked her directly, why do I need to prove anything to someone who won't be in my future? And then I went back to the orphanage. I kept up my food live streams while interacting with the kids. In my live stream, the most popular fan always showed up first. As I read through their posts, I noticed that their profile was as spotless as a brand new one. Dumplings were wrapped on New Year's Eve. During the live stream, I asked my viewers to guess what the filling was. Since I had a rather peculiar taste, I made it clear that the dumplings were for me. No one made a correct guess despite the large number of comments. Next came the comment from the top fan, sauerkraut filling. They logged off right away. I was certain it was Oriana after reading that one sentence. When midnight rolled around, I quickly put the kids to bed. I went outside to take pictures for their records and admire the snowmen they had constructed. It wasn't until I saw the headlights of cars at the entrance that I realized there were two figures waiting for an unknown amount of time in the snow. "Dad, Happy New Year." Ezekiel held a gift, but I didn't take it or give a damn. He opened the box to reveal a basket of dumplings to me, but he was nervous. "Mom and I even kneaded the dough ourselves to make these, Dad." Oriana said, "Try them. They're your favorite flavor. And this is the bowl of noodles that you showed me how to prepare. It has a flavor." I gave it a quick look and said, "This food has already gone cold." Oriana naturally understood what I meant when I said that exact line during our divorce. She appeared pale as the moonlight and the snow bounced off her face. Oriana wanted to say something, but it was impossible to gather what had been spilled because the past was gone. Ezekiel's expression grew gloomy. He wouldn't let Oriana go. Ezekiel struggled desperately, banging on the car window. "Dad, I was wrong. I was wrong." The Song family's bodyguards pulled him back with force, but he continued to yell, "Mom, you're a liar. You said if we made food for Dad, he would come home." The car drove away, but his cries were loud enough to wake the children who hadn't gone to sleep yet. They hurried outside, worried about me, saying, "Dad, if you want to go back home, we'll support you." The orphanage's children were all sensitive, which added to the heartbreaking situation. "Dad isn't going anywhere," I said, holding them close while gazing into their brilliant eyes in the moonlight. "This is Dad's house. I will always be by your side." Far away, the sky was streaked with colorful fireworks that showered everything with blessings. With the 4 seasons and 3 fire meals, the family gathers together under warm, inviting lights. I have no regrets in my life, and I will no longer be sad for anyone. Chapter 19. Ezekiel's Epilogue. My greatest regret is telling my father, "You don't deserve to be my dad." His face was composed and showed no signs of disappointment after I said that. Later, when I demanded that my mother bring Dad back, I repeatedly caused trouble in front of her, even though there were plenty of competent individuals in our family. Nobody was able to prepare the same mouth-watering meals, and no one took as much care of me as he did. Even though I was still young, I knew that this loss would cause me excruciating pain. I stopped pestering my mother about finding Dad after that New Year, because, like me, I was aware that he had permanently excluded her. I rushed to my grandparents and demanded that I adopt my father's name and return to the Lee surname. My grandparents wanted to go look for Dad because they believed he was solely to blame. At that moment, I understood that something outside of my control had bound my life from the beginning when I chose my last name. In the hopes of one day being able to support myself and locate my father, I threw myself into my studies in an effort to mature, to demonstrate that I was no longer the same impressionable youngster. However, my father was cold-hearted and gave me no opportunities. My father unexpectedly passed out at the orphanage the year I turned 18. Mom arrived at the hospital before me, and I noticed how much more white her hair was when I gave her a hug. Without my assistance, she would have been helpless and would have fallen to the ground. The physician emerged and gave a headshake. I became acutely aware at that moment. For the rest of our lives, my mother and I would use memories to dull our suffering. Mom's face had turned pale and lacked the charisma of a business leader. Her voice was breathless as she stooped to ask, "Why?" He was still so young. Did the patient have a head injury when he was younger? The blood clot caused pressure and now it's erupted as a medical condition, the doctor said, taking off his mask. Mom shook so badly that she almost passed out. Her hair had gone completely white while she was unconscious for 3 days. Later, I learned that my father had been in a car accident on his way to the hospital to deliver food to Mom during a rainy season. Although his head was severely injured, He only applied a simple bandage to the wound to spare money for Mom's recovery and nourishment, and to avoid worrying her. Years later, that injury turned into the bullet that was stuck in my mother's and my own brows. As Mom's mental health worsened, she quickly stopped running the business. When I asked Mom where Dad's ashes were, she replied that they were interred with the former director in the orphanage's back mountain. Dad should have been there. Alex decided to expand his business overseas after my mother rejected him numerous times. I didn't have the freedom to find out about my father until I took over the business from Mom. Dad was unaware, but Mom eventually purchased and took away the fried rice he had prepared for the King of Chefs competition that year. Dad never lacked admirers after his divorce from Mom, but he never got married again. I firmly believe that he loved Mom and me unconditionally, and he refused to try love again since we didn't value it. In spite of my grandparents' protests, Mom repurchased the modest home they had occupied and made their home there. She was given a notebook by the house's previous owner, who asked her to keep it secure so they could get it back when the original owner returned. I discovered the notebook in Mom's hands when she decided to take her own life at the age of 45. I found out it was my father's diary, which had numerous pages, some of which Mom had circled in red pen. I got this diary from Oriana. I'll treasure it. Oriana told me she would give me a place to live. I will no longer be alone from now on. Oriana is expecting a child. I will become a father. I'll put in a lot of effort to give her and the child a better future. Even though the Song family is big, my love for Oriana is greater than the universe. Oriana and Ezekiel no longer need me, I said. I have made the decision to go. The diary came to an end there, and Mom had written, "Duncan, I'm sorry," beneath it. I came to find you. And after that day, I had nowhere to go. I was born without a mother or father.